Captain Melissa Warren adjusted the yoke of her 737, the hum of the engines vibrating through the metal cabin as the plane cut through the chill Colorado air. The sun had just begun to dip behind the jagged Rockies, painting the sky in streaks of crimson and gold. From her vantage point in the cockpit, the world looked serene, almost unreal. Below, the tiny clusters of towns and winding highways seemed peaceful, and above, the open sky promised nothing but an ordinary flight. Passengers shuffled in their seats, some dozing lightly, others fiddling with screens or scrolling on their devices. The flight attendants moved through the cabin with calm efficiency, serving drinks and exchanging polite smiles. Everything about the flight seemed ordinary, routine. The kind of night Melissa had flown countless times before in her career. But routine was a fragile illusion. Melissa's mind briefly wandered to the life she had left behind. It was a life that felt like another lifetime. Sleek, black F-22s screaming across the sky at supersonic speeds, secret codes whispered over encrypted channels, and missions where the difference between life and death was measured in milliseconds. Those days were supposed to be behind her. She had walked away, traded the chaos of combat for the predictability of civilian life. She had sworn herself a new code: fly safely, transport passengers, and don't look back. Her co-pilot, a young man named Daniel, adjusted his headset and glanced at her with a grin. "Another quiet night in the sky, huh, Captain?" Melissa offered a polite smile, though her mind was elsewhere. "Quiet for now," she replied, almost as a warning to herself. The radar screen blinked with the usual dots representing other civilian aircraft in the vicinity, all predictable and in their proper air corridors. There was nothing unusual, yet instinct gnawed at her. Some residual tension from her old life lingered in her veins, a muscle memory of danger that refused to relax. The hum of the radio suddenly broke the calm. Air traffic control's voice was crisp, clipped, and edged with urgency. "Civilian 737, be advised, unidentified aircraft approaching fast." Melissa's eyes narrowed. "Say again," she asked, leaning closer to the radio. "Unidentified aircraft, high speed, closing on your position," ATC repeated, the tension unmistakable. "Maintain course and hold, military jets are en route." Melissa's hand tightened around the yoke. She didn't need to be told twice what this meant. A presence like that on radar wasn't accidental. Something was moving fast, something that didn't belong in civilian airspace, and it was coming straight for them. Daniel looked over, a flicker of worry crossing his young features. What kind of aircraft?" Melissa hesitated. She couldn't answer him fully. Her years of military service had taught her that fear and speculation in the cockpit were dangerous, but her pulse quickened. Something about the timing, the urgency in ATC's voice, the speed of the unknown contact, it all screamed of trouble far beyond the ordinary. Melissa keyed her microphone, replying calmly, masking her internal alarm. "Roger that. Maintaining course. 737, Captain Warren." Even as she spoke, a low hum of awareness settled over the cockpit. She scanned the instruments, the radar, and the skis beyond the windshield. Her trained eyes caught subtle movements, a flicker of a shadow against the fading sunlight, almost imperceptible, but enough to make her stomach tighten. Then it came, a voice over the encrypted military channel, distorted, electronic, but unmistakable. "Ghost Rider, if you can hear this, respond." Melissa froze. Daniel blinked at her, uncertain. Did you hear that?" Melissa swallowed hard, keeping her composure. She hadn't used that call sign in years. Not since the mission that had ended in fire, in smoke, in the loss of a teammate she had promised to protect. That name was supposed to be buried, locked away behind civilian flight manuals and autopilot systems. Her hand hovered over the microphone. For a long moment she considered ignoring it, dismissing it as a mistake or a glitch. But the voice came again, clearer this time. "Ghost Rider, do you copy? This is command, you're needed." Melissa's jaw tightened. She could feel her past clawing back to the surface, memories she had fought to suppress rising like smoke from an old fire. She glanced at Daniel. He looked confused, apprehensive. "Ghost Rider, is that?" His words faltered. Melissa shook her head slightly, almost as if to ward off the memories themselves. "Wrong channel," she muttered, but her voice lacked conviction. ATC interrupted again, sharp and insistent. 737, you're cleared to hold. Military jets are inbound. Maintain current heading. Melissa exhaled, trying to steady her racing heartbeat. She looked down at the passengers, oblivious to the tension above their heads. They were counting on her, trusting her to keep them safe. She couldn't let them see any sign of fear, but inside, a storm was brewing. The cockpit lights reflected off her hands, steady and controlled on the yoke, but her mind replayed the last mission she had flown as Ghost Rider. Every high-speed maneuver, every evasive action, every split-second decision that had meant life or death. The memories came unbidden, vivid and raw. She had left that life behind, traded speed and fire for schedules and flight plans, but the ghosts had found her anyway. Daniel's voice broke through her thoughts again. "Captain, what's happening? Who are they?" Melissa didn't answer immediately. She didn't want to lie, and she didn't want to reveal too much. "Something military," she said finally. "They're here for a reason, and we need to be ready." The radio crackled once more. This time, the voice was unmistakable to her trained ears, authoritative, precise, urgent. "Ghost Rider, we need you to respond immediately. Your clearance is required." Melissa's stomach sank. The clearance they spoke of was something she had abandoned years ago. It wasn't supposed to matter to her anymore. But it did. And suddenly, she realized that her quiet, predictable life had been shattered in a single transmission. Daniel leaned forward, eyes wide with a mix of awe and fear. "Captain, you know them." Melissa's lips pressed into a thin line. "More than I should," she said quietly. Her gaze swept over the endless sky ahead, the streaking colors of sunset now shadowed by an encroaching sense of danger. Her past had found her, and there was no ignoring it. Outside, the clouds gathered like silent witnesses, their edges glowing in the dying light. Somewhere above and beyond, the unknown aircraft drew closer, fast, purposeful, and threatening. And Melissa Warren knew, deep down, that the world she had left behind was about to demand everything from her once more. Her fingers tightened on the controls, her jaw firm. She had survived impossible missions before, and she would survive this. But first, she had to answer the question that burned in the encrypted voice over the radio. "Ghost Rider, do you copy?" Melissa's hand hovered over the microphone. Her chest tightened. She had one choice, one decision that could change everything. She exhaled slowly, and then in a voice that was calm, controlled, and carrying the weight of someone who had faced death more times than she could count, she spoke. "This is Captain Melissa Warren, civilian flight. You're contacting the wrong aircraft." A tense silence followed. And then came the reply. "No, we're not." Cockpit lights flickered slightly as Melissa's mind raced, every nerve alert. Her hands rested on the yoke, steady outwardly, but inside, a storm churned. The voice on the encrypted channel wasn't a glitch, it was deliberate. Someone had found her, and whatever was coming for them was fast, precise, and dangerous. Her co-pilot Daniel fumbled with the radar screens, his fingers shaking slightly. "Captain, the radar is showing multiple contacts. They're closing fast. I don't even know what to call them." Melissa leaned closer, her eyes scanning the digital blips. Even from her civilian vantage, she could see the signature of advanced aircraft, speed and trajectory far beyond commercial or even civilian military planes. The F-22s were inbound, yes, but these unknown signatures, something was off. She swallowed hard, forcing calm. "Keep your eyes on the instruments and on me. Don't panic. We handle this like we've handled every problem at 30,000 feet, step by step." Daniel nodded, though he looked pale. Step by step, right. Melissa's mind flicked back to the mission that had earned her the call sign Ghost Rider. The night skis over hostile territories, the adrenaline of intercepts, the precise choreography of evasion maneuvers, it all came rushing back. She hadn't thought she'd ever feel it again, the raw edge of danger at her fingertips. But now, it was here, over Colorado, where she should have felt safe. Air traffic control's voice returned, urgent and clipped. 737, hold your current heading. 2 F-22s are scrambling to intercept the unidentified aircraft. Stand by for further instructions. Melissa's stomach twisted. She had seen F-22s in action before. They were fast, lethal, and capable of near invisibility to civilian radar. But there was something unnerving about the coordination here. Whoever was in those planes wasn't just escorting, they were hunting. And now they were communicating with her specifically. Then the voice came again, low, distorted, almost mechanical from the encryption. Ghost Rider, identify yourself immediately. Melissa froze. Daniel's eyes went wide. Did you hear that? Did they just call you Ghost Rider? Melissa's jaw tightened. She had buried that identity, hoped it would stay buried, and never imagined it would reach her here. The call sign was a relic of missions she hadn't survived unscathed, memories of nights filled with smoke, fire, and decisions no civilian pilot should ever have to make. I don't know what you're talking about, she said slowly, her voice steady but tight. This is Captain Melissa Warren, 737, civilian flight. You have the wrong aircraft. A pause. Silence, broken only by the steady hum of the engines and the faint clicks of the radar instruments. No mistake, the voice came back, calm but unyielding. We need you. Authorization code Ghost Rider. Melissa's heart pounded. Authorization codes, military clearance. She hadn't held them in years. Not since she'd left the Air Force, not since she had walked away from a mission that had haunted her for years. And now, here it was, demanding her attention in the most mundane of settings. A commercial flight, carrying innocent passengers who had no idea of the storm about to break over them. Daniel leaned in closer, voice low. Captain, is that military? Melissa's mind raced, weighing options. She could ignore it, claim a miscommunication, maybe avoid whatever danger lurked above. But instinct screamed that the voice was real, urgent, and connected to threats that were anything but theoretical. Every fiber of her body, the muscle memory from years of combat flight, warned her that this wasn't a drill. Melissa exhaled and glanced at Daniel, who looked back at her, anxious and uncertain. Listen, she said quietly, whatever you think you know about flying a commercial jet, forget it. I'm going to handle this. Her hand hovered over the microphone, the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. This is Captain Warren, she said firmly. I am responding. Go ahead. The line crackled, then a single name came through, commanding, familiar, and shocking all at once. Melissa, it's Commander Briggs. Do you copy? Her breath caught. Briggs, the last person she had wanted to hear from again. The man who had been at the center of the mission that had changed her life forever, who had saved lives she had sworn would be lost. She hadn't heard his voice in years, and now it was here, urgent and demanding, over a frequency she wasn't supposed to monitor. Yes, she whispered almost to herself. I copy. Daniel's hand froze over the console. Captain, you know him. Melissa didn't answer immediately. She had to focus. Every fiber of her being went on alert. Yes, she said finally, keeping her tone neutral. I know him. Briggs' voice cut in again, low and commanding. Melissa, listen carefully. There's a situation over your flight path. Civilian airspace is compromised. Enemy aircraft are inbound. The F-22s are on it, but they won't intercept in time. You're in position. We need your authorization code. We need Ghost Rider. Melissa's hands clenched around the yoke. Authorization code, Ghost Rider. It had been years since she had flown missions that required it. She had thought those days were behind her. She had thought she could live quietly in the world of passenger manifests and flight logs, but here it was again, demanding everything she had learned to suppress: courage, precision, split-second decision-making, and the ability to move faster than fear itself. Daniel looked at her, pale. "Captain, what does that mean? Are we in danger?" Melissa's gaze swept over the cabin, over the passengers, over the screens. "Yes," she admitted softly, though firmly. "We are, and it's going to get worse before it gets better." She activated the transponder, sending a coded response to the F-22s. Her hands moved with the fluidity of someone who had done this before, someone who had lived and died in moments just like this. She could almost feel the old thrill, the surge of adrenaline, the clarity that came when life demanded total attention. Outside, the sky had darkened slightly, clouds rolling in like shadows over the sunlit peaks. The unknown aircraft blinked across her radar, closing in fast, its intentions unreadable but threatening. She had seconds, maybe less, to act. "Hold steady," she said to Daniel, voice calm but firm. "We do exactly what we trained to do, eyes forward, hands ready." The cockpit radio crackled one last time before the line went silent. Then, over the static, the words came, two simple words that froze her blood. "Ghost Rider, identify now." Melissa swallowed hard, heart racing. Her fingers tightened on the yoke. She had a choice, one that could determine the safety of every soul on board, and deep down, she knew she couldn't hide anymore. The past she had buried had found her, and the sky above Colorado would demand the return of Ghost Rider. Her pulse thundered in her ears as the radar screen confirmed the worst. The unidentified aircraft was closing fast, F-22s converging from above, and the world outside the cockpit had become a battlefield. Melissa Warren exhaled slowly, then spoke into the microphone, steady, resolute, and carrying every ounce of the woman she had become. "This is Captain Melissa Warren. I am Ghost Rider. What is the situation?" Silence. Then the unmistakable voice of Commander Briggs returned, clipped and urgent. "You're the only one who can handle this. Buckle up. This is not a drill." Melissa's jaw tightened. Her life had just gone from ordinary to impossible, and above, in the fading twilight, the unknown threat drew closer, waiting to test her limits, and the passengers' lives hung in the balance. The cockpit felt impossibly small, though in reality it was a standard 737 flight deck. But inside, Melissa Warren could feel the weight of years pressing on her shoulders. Every warning light, every blip on the radar, every static-laden word over the encrypted channel reminded her that the past she had tried to bury had found her. "Ghost Rider, identify immediately," Briggs' voice had said. And in that one phrase, the careful boundaries she had built around her civilian life shattered. The name Ghost Rider wasn't just a call sign. It was a history written in sweat, blood, and impossible choices. She had earned it in missions that demanded precision beyond human limits, where hesitation meant death. Now it hung in the air again, over Colorado, over a plane full of oblivious civilians, and over her heart like a blade. Daniel fumbled with the controls, his hands visibly shaking. "Captain, I don't understand. Are we in danger?" Melissa turned to him, her face calm, her voice steady, though internally every muscle tensed. "Yes," she said quietly, the words carrying the weight of absolute truth. "And we're not ready for it." Her mind flicked back to that final mission she had flown as Ghost Rider, the one that had earned her notoriety among her squadron. The mission had been simple in theory: extraction, precision, minimum exposure. But things had gone wrong almost immediately. Enemy fighters had ambushed her squad, radar blackouts had made communication impossible, and she had had to improvise in real time. One of her teammates hadn't survived. The image of the folded flag being handed to a grieving family had haunted her ever since. She had walked away the next day, resigned her commission, and tried to bury that part of herself in passenger manifests and autopilot checklists, and she had succeeded for years, until tonight. Her co-pilot's eyes were wide. Captain, if that's really you, Ghost Rider, how is that even possible? Melissa exhaled slowly, a hand brushing the back of her neck as if to steady the invisible tremors running through her. It's possible because it has to be, she said. Her tone left no room for argument, no room for panic. She had learned long ago that hesitation at moments like this was more dangerous than any enemy aircraft. The radar pinged again, multiple blips now, converging rapidly toward their location. The unknown aircraft weren't just fast, they were intelligent. They moved like predators, weaving through civilian corridors with terrifying precision. Briggs' voice came back over the line, clipped and sharp. Melissa, the threat is closing. F-22s are intercepting, but you're in position. We need Ghost Rider. Authorization code required. Lives are at stake. Melissa's hand hovered over the microphone, the memories of codes and protocols rising unbidden. Every muscle remembered the motions, the key sequences, the rapid input, the voice confirmation. But years had passed. Would she still remember the exact procedure under pressure? Could she still respond fast enough to stop disaster? Daniel leaned forward almost reverently. Captain, are you saying you flew missions like this? Melissa's eyes softened briefly as she looked at him. He was young, innocent in ways she had long ago lost. I did, she admitted. And if I don't act, people could die tonight, not just us, civilians. The gravity of the statement hung in the air. She could see the city lights below, the highways winding like veins through the mountains, the tiny vehicles moving obliviously. All of them could be at risk if she didn't get this right. Outside, the sun had dipped fully below the horizon, leaving a twilight canvas streaked with purple and gold. The unknown aircraft glimmered faintly on the radar, moving with deliberate, terrifying speed. Melissa could feel her heartbeat in her fingertips. Briggs' voice broke through again, urgent and insistent. Ghost Rider, do you read me? You are the only one who can handle this. Authorization code required. Lives are at stake. Civilian airspace is compromised. Melissa's jaw tightened. The authorization code was more than a set of letters or numbers. It was a commitment, a recognition that she was still capable of extraordinary action. And she was. Deep down, despite the years and the civilian life she had tried to build, she was still Ghost Rider. She had never stopped being him. Copy that, she said, keying the sequence into the transponder, her hands moving with a precision that made Daniel stare in awe. Authorization code input complete. Ghost Rider active. The F-22s above them altered course slightly, acknowledging the signal. Melissa felt a spark of relief. She wasn't alone. She hadn't been called back without backup. But the unknown aircraft were still a threat, and their speed suggested they had deadly intent. Daniel's voice broke the tense silence. Captain, what happens now? Melissa took a deep breath, steadying herself. She had seconds to act, decisions to make that could save hundreds of lives. Now, she said, her voice calm but firm, we maneuver. Follow my lead, trust me. She adjusted the controls, banking the 737 in a way that was unorthodox for a commercial jet. It groaned under the stress, passengers jolting slightly as the plane tilted. She could see the blips on radar reacting to her maneuvers. Her movements were deliberate, careful, a balance between civilian safety and tactical advantage. The voice of Briggs crackled again. Good. You remember faster than I expected. Keep control. Stay sharp. The unknown aircraft are faster than you think. They may attempt evasive tactics. Your skill is our edge. Melissa exhaled, focusing entirely on the cockpit, on the instruments, on the sky above. Every lesson, every mission, every life-and-death decision she had made in the past sharpened her now. The civilian flight deck had become a battlefield, and she was the only one equipped to handle it. Then, through the haze of static and tension, came a sound she hadn't expected. A faint but unmistakable signature on the radar, moving erratically, someone trying to evade, testing her, probing the limits of her ability. Melissa's pulse quickened. This wasn't just an unknown aircraft. It was intelligent, calculating, and dangerous. She leaned forward, eyes locked on the radar, instincts kicking in as if she were decades younger, flying missions where hesitation was death. Daniel watched her, realization dawning. "Captain, you really were Ghost Rider. You're incredible." Melissa didn't answer. She had no time for pride. The aircraft on the radar were closing fast. Outside, the sky had darkened to a deep indigo, the horizon a thin line of fading light. Somewhere out there, enemy craft lurked, calculating, targeting, waiting for a moment of weakness. And Melissa Warren, Ghost Rider, was about to remind them why she had earned that name. Her fingers tightened on the yoke. Her eyes swept over the cockpit, over the instruments, over the radar blips converging on their flight path. She could feel the old thrill, the old fear, the old precision coursing through her veins. The past had found her, and it demanded action. Briggs' voice came again, low, urgent, clipped with command. "Ghost Rider, you are cleared for engagement protocols. Enemy aircraft are closing. Do not hesitate." Melissa's jaw set. She had spent years trying to forget this life, but the sky had a way of pulling her back, and tonight there would be no turning back. She pressed a final sequence on the radio, signaling the F-22s, and leaned into the yoke, prepared to face whatever came next. Because in the skis over Colorado, Ghost Rider was back, and the unknown threat was about to find out exactly why she had earned that name. And in the cockpit, she whispered to herself, a promise and a warning all at once. "They're about to regret ever crossing my path." The fading twilight outside the cockpit turned into deep blue, almost black, as Melissa Warren guided the 737 through the stratosphere. Her hands gripped the yoke with calm precision, but her heart hammered in her chest like a drum. Every pilot learns to measure risk, but what she faced now was unlike anything in civilian aviation manuals. The unknown aircraft on radar weren't just fast, they were intelligent, aggressive, and deliberate. And they weren't alone. Daniel's eyes kept flicking between the radar screen and Melissa, the younger pilot clearly wrestling with disbelief. "Captain, how can they even be out here? I mean, this is civilian airspace. They're fighters, right?" Melissa didn't answer immediately. Her gaze swept over the instruments and then back to the night sky. There was no time for explanations, only decisions. "Yes, but the moment we react with panic, we lose. Keep calm. Follow my lead. Eyes forward." The first F-22 streaked across the horizon above them, jet afterburners glowing against the twilight. Its sleek, angular form cut through the night like a predator. Melissa's stomach tightened, not with fear, but with recognition. She had flown alongside these jets countless times, but never in a commercial cockpit, never in a situation where hundreds of civilians depended on her for survival. ATC's voice crackled again, tense and clipped. 737, maintain your current heading. F-22s are providing escort. Unknown aircraft remain a threat. Stand by for instructions. Melissa exhaled slowly, letting the weight of the moment settle. F-22s meant serious business. These weren't drills. These weren't exercises. These were real intercepts, and their precise movement around her plane was a calculated dance of protection and dominance. Then over the encrypted line, Briggs' voice returned. "Ghost Rider, authorization verified. You are now cleared for engagement protocols. Enemy craft approaching at 600 knots. Civilian flight must remain intact. We need you to maneuver. Initiate evasive sequence Alpha 3. Melissa's hands moved instantly, performing precise, practiced maneuvers she hadn't used in years. The 737 groaned under the strain, tilting sharply, the passengers inside unaware of the ballet of survival unfolding above them. Drinks sloshed, a child cried, and a flight attendant steadied herself against the service cart, confused by the sudden turbulence. Daniel's jaw dropped. "Captain, what just happened?" Melissa's eyes never left the instruments. Precision banking, Watch the radar. Follow my commands. Don't think about what's normal. Think about survival. Outside, the unknown aircraft responded, moving with a cunning speed that made Melissa's pulse spike. They weren't just chasing. They were probing, testing the limits of her maneuvers. It was almost like they recognized the woman flying the plane, almost like they knew who Ghost Rider was. Briggs' voice cut back in, clipped and urgent. They're coordinating. Expect evasive maneuvers. Do not underestimate. F-22s are keeping formation, but you are the only one positioned for direct interception. Civilian lives are at stake. Melissa exhaled slowly, a bead of sweat tracing her temple. She hadn't just flown missions before, she had led them, executed them, survived them, but never with passengers. Never with innocent lives in the balance, with every move she made risking catastrophe. A bright streak appeared on the radar, closing in fast, an unknown craft slicing through the darkness. Melissa's heart thumped. It wasn't just testing her, it was hunting. She keyed the mic. "Briggs, this is Ghost Rider. Confirm trajectory. Are we expecting a direct intercept?" "Affirmative," Briggs replied. "Unknown aircraft are aggressive and highly maneuverable. Expect possible engagement. Maintain altitude. Prepare evasive action." Melissa adjusted her yoke, banking hard to the right, twisting the massive aircraft in a way most commercial pilots would never dare. The 737 groaned and shuddered, but the craft responded beautifully, every motion precise, controlled. She could feel every ounce of her past training, every instinct honed over years of combat flowing through her. Ghost Rider was alive, and she was fully aware of it. Daniel's voice trembled. "Captain, how are you doing that? We're banking like this, the plane." Melissa shot him a quick glance, her expression calm but fierce. "The plane can handle it. I can handle it. Focus. Follow my lead." Outside, the F-22s flanked them, moving in synchronization with Melissa's maneuvers, forming a protective shield around the plane. The unknown aircraft made sudden, erratic movements, probing for weaknesses, seeking an opening. But Melissa anticipated each one, instinctively countering with precision that even the F-22 pilots seemed to respect. Then came the sudden, chilling moment. The enemy broke formation and accelerated, closing the gap dangerously fast. Melissa's stomach twisted. She knew that if they reached firing range, disaster would strike the plane and everyone inside. Briggs' voice came in tense and urgent. "Ghost Rider, you are cleared for full evasive maneuvers. F-22s will engage directly. Civilian safety is your priority. We need you to act now." Melissa exhaled, eyes narrowing. This was it. The moment she had trained for, the moment she had tried to forget, had returned. She had no choice. She would be Ghost Rider again. Her hands moved instinctively, banking sharply, twisting, adjusting, calculating every vector, every speed, every minute tilt of the plane. The 737 responded, groaning but obeying. The unknown aircraft faltered, forced to adapt, while the F-22s surged forward with calculated precision, locking their systems on the threat. Daniel's voice was barely audible over the turbulence. "Captain, they're retreating. How is that possible?" Melissa didn't answer immediately. Her eyes were locked on the radar, her mind calculating. "Not retreating," she said finally. "They're regrouping, they're testing us, watching, waiting for a mistake." The sky outside had become a deep, nearly black canvas. The city below was dotted with tiny lights, unaware of the deadly ballet unfolding in the night above. The unknown threat circled, probing, patient, and Ghost Rider, Melissa Warren, stood ready, alive, fully present, commanding the 737 like it was a fighter jet and not a commercial airliner. Briggs' voice cut through the tension one last time. "Ghost Rider, be aware. This engagement is not over. The unknown craft will make their move soon. Prepare for evasive Alpha 4. Civilian lives depend on you." Melissa exhaled slowly, gripping the yoke, eyes scanning the darkened horizon. The night had closed around them, shadows in the sky, blips on the radar, tension thick as steel. She had embraced her past, but the storm above was just beginning. And somewhere out there, the unknown aircraft were plotting their next move, unaware that the woman in the 737, the one they had been hunting, was no longer just a civilian pilot. She was Ghost Rider. And the night sky was about to prove it. Melissa Warren's eyes stayed locked on the radar, her body rigid yet fluid, every nerve alive. The unknown aircraft were circling now, precise, intelligent, and dangerous, far more than anyone should have encountered in civilian airspace. The F-22s flanking them moved like lethal shadows, but Melissa knew something the pilots might not fully grasp. The unknowns weren't just aggressive, they were testing her. They had remembered Ghost Rider, and they intended to see if she was still the pilot who had survived impossible missions. Daniel's voice trembled over the intercom. "Captain, I've never seen anything like this. How are we still airborne? The maneuvers, they're insane." Melissa allowed herself a flicker of a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Stay focused. Watch the instruments, trust me. We're not just flying, we're surviving." Her thoughts flickered back, unbidden, to the last mission she had flown as Ghost Rider. The extraction over hostile territory, the ambush, the rapid decision-making under gunfire, and the sound of engines screaming past her in deadly proximity. She had survived, but not without cost. One teammate had died that night, someone she had promised she would bring home. The folded flag had haunted her for years. The mission had never truly ended. Now, decades later in a civilian cockpit, the past had returned. The unknown aircraft were the ghosts of her unfinished missions, and she could feel every muscle, every instinct, remembering the discipline and the courage required to survive. Briggs' voice returned over the encrypted line, tense but measured. "Ghost Rider, the threat is now in proximity. They may engage within 2 minutes. Civilian lives are your priority. F-22s are moving to intercept, but you must maintain control. Initiate evasive sequence Alpha 5. Melissa's hands moved with the precision of a surgeon and the instinct of a predator. The 737 groaned and tilted, responding to maneuvers no ordinary pilot could execute. Daniel clutched the console, awe and fear etched into his young face. "Captain, they're right there. They're going to fire." Melissa didn't respond. Every thought, every calculation, every muscle memory converged. She banked sharply, raising the nose, dipping the wings, threading the plane between radar blips and flares of engine exhaust in the night sky. She could feel the stress on the fuselage, the pressure building, but she also felt alive. For a moment, the past and present merged. Ghost Rider was back. The unknown aircraft adjusted its trajectory, following her maneuvers, closing in once more. Then came the unmistakable moment of danger. Their path intersected dangerously close. Melissa's stomach twisted, but she did what Ghost Rider had always done: act before fear could paralyze her. "Brace yourself," she warned Daniel, "and make sure the autopilot stays ready as backup. We may have seconds to react." The first missile lock warning blinked on her panel. Her eyes scanned the radar, anticipating every move. She remembered the tactics, the evasions, the impossible choices. And she acted. The 737 tilted sharply, engines roaring, a sudden surge upward that would have terrified any untrained pilot or passenger. Drinks spilled, a baby cried, and the flight attendants gripped the rails as if their lives depended on it. In truth, they did. The F-22s flanked the threat, engaging their systems. The missile warning blinked again, then dissipated, diverted by the jet's countermeasures. Melissa exhaled a short, tense breath, keeping her composure for Daniel's sake. "Not done yet," she said softly, almost to herself. "They're testing, waiting for a mistake." Briggs' voice came again, clipped with command. "Ghost Rider, we've got eyes on multiple additional contacts. They're coordinated. You're the only civilian aircraft positioned to maneuver effectively. Civilian airspace must remain intact. You must maintain control. Full evasive Alpha 6 sequence on my mark." Melissa's hands moved instinctively, eyes scanning, calculating every vector. "Mark," she said sharply. The plane responded beautifully, banking, twisting, every movement precise, controlled chaos. The unknown aircraft faltered, forced to adjust their trajectory. They hadn't expected her. She was not just a civilian pilot, they were underestimating Ghost Rider. Daniel, wide-eyed, whispered, "Captain, how do you know all this? How do you survive this?" Melissa didn't answer. Words wouldn't suffice. Only action could protect the passengers. Only precision could keep them alive. The plane tilted violently, engines screaming, lights flickering, passengers gripping seats and rails. She could feel their fear, but she couldn't allow herself to panic. She had been in worse situations. Then came the radio transmission, low and urgent. "Ghost Rider, you are cleared for emergency intercept protocol. Engage evasive maneuvers. Unknown aircraft are maneuvering to attack. Civilian lives depend on you. Do not hesitate." Melissa's jaw tightened. She had no hesitation left. Not tonight. Not when hundreds of lives were at stake. She would not fail. Ghost Rider did not fail. She adjusted the plane, banking sharply left, then right, weaving in a pattern that drew the enemy aircraft into a trap the F-22s had set up. The unknown craft followed, calculating, adjusting, aggressive, but trapped. Melissa's heart raced, her hands never wavering, every decision precise, every movement vital. A moment of eerie calm settled, broken by Briggs' voice, almost a whisper over the radio. "Good work, Ghost Rider, but this is not over. Enemy has regrouped. Expect a second wave within 60 seconds. Maintain civilian integrity." Melissa exhaled slowly, feeling the tension build once more. She could see the city lights below, winding roads, vehicles, lives unaware of the deadly ballet in the skies above. She had to protect them. Every instinct, every skill, every memory from her past, the mission she had tried to forget, was alive and burning now. Daniel, voice trembling, said, "Captain, are you okay?" Melissa looked at him, her face calm but intense. "I'm fine," she said, "but this mission, it never ended, and we're about to see why." Outside, the dark night sky seemed to stretch endlessly, dotted with the faint glows of distant cities, of radar blips, of the threats circling, waiting, calculating. Ghost Rider, Melissa Warren, was fully present, and the unknown aircraft were about to learn the consequences of underestimating her. And somewhere in the shadows above, the first missiles were already arcing, invisible in the night sky, their destination clear. The countdown had begun. Melissa tightened her grip, heart pounding. She had survived impossible missions before, but tonight, the stakes were higher than ever. Civilian lives, her own past, and the deadly unknown aircraft converged in a deadly triangle. She whispered to herself, a promise, a warning, and a vow all at once. "I will not fail, not tonight, not ever." The first wave of danger was closing. Ghost Rider was back, and the mission they had never closed was far from over. The night sky had transformed into a black canvas streaked with occasional city lights below. Melissa Warren's hands gripped the yoke of the 737 with white-knuckled precision, the engines roaring beneath her, as if aware of the gravity of the situation. Every movement of the aircraft was a balance of skill, instinct, and survival. The years as Ghost Rider converging into this single, impossible moment. Daniel, still visibly pale, glanced at the radar and then at Melissa. "Captain, they're back. I can see them. Multiple contacts fast, much faster than before. Are we going to survive this?" Melissa exhaled slowly, a tight knot of determination in her chest. "We don't survive by thinking about it. We survive by acting. Focus on your instruments, trust me. We've trained for situations like this, even if you didn't know it." Daniel swallowed, nodding. He didn't need to understand fully, he only needed to follow her lead. And tonight, every life aboard depended on that trust. The F-22s flanking the 737 tightened their formation, their afterburners glowing faintly in the darkness. They were a shield, a lifeline, but Melissa knew better than to rely entirely on them. The unknown aircraft weren't just aggressive, they were cunning. They had observed her maneuvers, learned her patterns, and were now preparing a second wave that would push everything to the limit. The encrypted channel crackled. Briggs' voice, clipped and urgent, reached her ears. Ghost Rider, second wave inbound. High-speed vectors. Engagement likely within 30 seconds. Civilian safety must be maintained. F-22s will intercept, but you are the only one positioned for precise evasion. Evasive Alpha 7 sequence on my mark. Melissa's jaw tightened. 30 seconds, that was all she had. She leaned forward, eyes scanning the radar, reading each blip, each movement, each subtle vector. Her past life, the one she had tried to bury, was alive in her veins. Every maneuver, every evasive tactic, every split-second decision was instinct now. Ghost Rider wasn't just a call sign. It was a lifetime of training, sacrifice, and survival distilled into muscle memory. "Mark," she said, voice steady, commanding. The 737 tilted sharply, banking left in a calculated motion that would have terrified any untrained pilot. Daniel adjusted the console, following her instructions with trembling hands. Outside, the unknown aircraft surged forward, engines blazing, weaving through the night sky with deadly precision. Their goal was clear: test her, corner her, force a mistake. Melissa anticipated their moves, countering with maneuvers that bent the limits of a commercial jet. The fuselage groaned, warning lights flickered, but she didn't falter. She couldn't. Hundreds of lives depended on her. The first missile warning flashed, instantaneous, red, terrifying. Melissa didn't flinch. She twisted the yoke sharply, diving and banking simultaneously. The missile's trajectory shifted. The F-22s fired flares, intercepting the deadly projectile. Daniel gasped audibly. They hit it," he exclaimed. Melissa didn't respond. She was already calculating the next threat. Another blip on the radar moved in, faster than anything she had seen tonight. The enemy wasn't stopping. They were coordinating, relentless, and now more aggressive than ever. Briggs' voice returned over the line, urgency sharp in every word. "Ghost Rider, multiple missiles inbound. F-22s engaging. You must maintain course and altitude within limits to protect civilians. Full evasive Alpha 8 on my mark." Melissa nodded to herself. Alpha 8. It was the highest intensity maneuver she had ever executed in civilian airspace. Any miscalculation could spell disaster for the passengers. Her heart raced, adrenaline surging. "Mark," she said. The 737 banked, tilted, and twisted in a sequence that would have been impossible for any normal pilot. The unknown aircraft faltered, forced to adjust their strategy, while the F-22s intercepted missiles and flanked them with lethal precision. Daniel's voice trembled as he followed her commands. "Captain, the plane, I can't believe this is happening. How are we still in the air?" Melissa shot him a quick glance, fierce and commanding. "Because I'm Ghost Rider, focus." The unknown aircraft regrouped again, circling, probing, testing for any sign of weakness. Melissa's mind raced. Every memory of evasive tactics, high-speed intercepts, and combat scenarios was alive in her, guiding her hands, her eyes, and her decisions. Then came a new threat, a high-speed blip approaching from below, a trajectory that could intersect with the plane in seconds. Melissa's pulse quickened. She could feel the tension radiating through the fuselage, through the instruments, through the air itself. One mistake now, and everyone aboard could be in mortal danger. She adjusted the yoke, banking sharply and climbing in a controlled maneuver designed to avoid the trajectory while maintaining as much speed as possible. The 737 groaned, lights flickered, and Daniel gritted his teeth, following her lead. Briggs' voice crackled again, taut with urgency. "Ghost Rider, unknown craft are aggressive and coordinated. Prepare for evasive Alpha 9. Civilian airspace is at maximum risk. You are cleared to override standard protocols." Melissa exhaled slowly, letting the tension sharpen into clarity. Standard protocols weren't enough tonight. This wasn't about schedules or autopilot routines. This was survival, skill, and instinct. She pushed the aircraft into a sequence of maneuvers that would have made the most experienced military pilots pause, twisting, banking, climbing, descending in a deadly ballet of calculated motion. The unknown aircraft reacted, weaving in patterns that mirrored her maneuvers, almost as if they anticipated her. But Melissa wasn't anticipating. They were reading Ghost Rider, and she would not be outmaneuvered. A bright streak of light appeared on radar missile trajectory. She adjusted instantly, a sudden climb and sharp bank sending the projectile harmlessly away, intercepted by an F-22 flare. Daniel's voice trembled. "Captain, that was incredible." Melissa didn't respond, focused, eyes scanning, mind racing. She knew the battle was far from over. The enemy was relentless. The second wave had hit, but she had survived, for now. Outside, the darkened night sky stretched endlessly, filled with blips of light, aircraft maneuvering at terrifying speeds, engines screaming through the cold air. Ghost Rider was alive, fully present, and the unknown aircraft had discovered what they had underestimated: a civilian pilot who was far more than she seemed. Melissa tightened her grip on the yoke. Her voice was calm, but her tone carried the weight of command. "Daniel, stay sharp. They're not done, and neither am I." The F-22s moved in tighter formation, flanking the 737, while the unknown craft circled, calculating their next move. Melissa exhaled slowly, muscles tense, mind sharp. She had survived impossible missions before, but tonight, the stakes had never been higher. Civilian lives, past ghosts, and the deadly unknown converged in a deadly triangle above Colorado. And she knew, deep down, that the night had only just begun. The countdown had started. The second wave had been met. And somewhere high above, the enemy was planning the next move. Ghost Rider Melissa Warren was ready. The night had grown suffocatingly dark, a velvet black sky stretching endlessly over Colorado, punctuated by the faint glow of city lights far below. Melissa Warren's eyes remained locked on the radar, her hands gripping the yoke of the 737 with a precision born of years spent in life-or-death situations. Every muscle, every reflex, every instinct that had once made her Ghost Rider alive now surged through her like electricity. Daniel sat beside her, pale and trembling but trusting implicitly. "Captain, they're coordinating again. I've never seen anything like this. What are we even up against?" Melissa didn't answer immediately. Her gaze flicked between the radar blips and the night sky outside the cockpit. The unknown aircraft were no ordinary fighters. They moved like predators, weaving, probing, testing. They had watched her every maneuver, learned her patterns, and now they were ready for the final test. "Daniel," she said finally, voice calm but unyielding, "we're not just flying anymore. We're engaging. I need you sharp, eyes on instruments, hands ready. Don't look outside unless I tell you to." Daniel nodded, hands trembling as he adjusted the flight controls. "Yes, Captain." Melissa exhaled, her mind flashing back to the missions that had earned her the Ghost Rider call sign, the extraction over hostile territory, the ambush, the life-or-death maneuvers that had pushed every pilot to their limit. She had survived then, but at a cost. Lives had been lost, promises had been broken, and yet here she was, decades later, confronting a new enemy over civilian skis. Briggs' voice crackled over the encrypted line, sharp and urgent. "Ghost Rider, unknown craft are converging on your altitude. F-22s are engaging, but you are the only one positioned for precise maneuvers. Civilian lives are at stake. Initiate engagement sequence Omega-1." Melissa's pulse quickened. Omega-1. The designation itself was enough to trigger the adrenaline surge she had once relied on to survive hostile skis. This wasn't just evasive action anymore. This was direct engagement, a confrontation that required the full Ghost Rider skill set. "Understood," she said, her voice tight but controlled. "Engagement Omega-1 initiated." The 737 tilted sharply, banking right as she threaded it between two approaching aircraft, the engines screaming in protest. The fuselage groaned under the stress, warning lights flickering, passengers oblivious to the deadly ballet unfolding above them. Every motion, every tilt, every calculated maneuver was a life-or-death decision. Daniel's voice trembled. "Captain, they're right there. I can't believe we're still in the air." Melissa didn't answer. She was focused, calculating, anticipating. The unknown aircraft were intelligent, but they hadn't faced Ghost Rider, Melissa Warren in command of a civilian jet, executing maneuvers that defied expectation. She twisted the plane sharply, then leveled it just enough to maintain altitude while forcing the enemy to adjust mid-course. Outside, the F-22s streaked through the sky, intercepting missiles, flanking the unknown craft and protecting the 737. But Melissa knew she couldn't rely solely on them. Every second of hesitation, every misstep could spell disaster. She had to control the sky herself. The unknown aircraft attempted a sudden maneuver, diving in a way that threatened to intersect with the 737's path. Melissa reacted instantly, banking sharply, twisting and climbing in a complex pattern that forced the enemy off trajectory. The 737 shuddered, warning alarms flashing, but she didn't falter. She couldn't. Not now. Briggs' voice cut through the tension, clipped with urgency. "Ghost Rider, unknown craft are regrouping for final assault. Civilian lives remain your top priority. You must maintain control. Full Omega-2 sequence on my mark." Melissa's jaw tightened. Omega-2. She had executed it countless times in simulations and past missions, but never with hundreds of innocent lives aboard. She exhaled slowly, letting her instincts sharpen. The past and present merged, Ghost Rider alive in every movement. "Mark," she said firmly. The 737 twisted violently, engines roaring as it executed a complex weave through the sky. The unknown craft faltered, forced to adjust, their coordination momentarily disrupted. The F-22s surged forward, intercepting missiles and flanking positions. Daniel gasped audibly. "Captain, they can't keep up with us." Melissa allowed herself a brief glance at him, fierce and commanding. "Not if we stay sharp, eyes on instruments, every movement counts." The enemy aircraft regrouped, diving again in an aggressive pattern. Melissa's mind raced. Every maneuver she made had to balance civilian safety with tactical advantage. One wrong tilt, one miscalculation, and disaster. She could see the faint lights of the city below, the roads winding like veins through the darkness. Every life aboard depended on her precision. Then came the unmistakable moment of danger. The lead unknown craft locked a targeting system on the 737, a missile signature appearing instantly on the radar. Melissa's pulse spiked, heart hammering. She had one chance, one opportunity. She twisted the plane sharply, banking, climbing, and then leveled just as the F-22s launched countermeasures. The missile detonated harmlessly in the sky, flares streaking past like glowing comets. Daniel's voice trembled. "Captain, that was insane. You saved us." Melissa didn't answer immediately. Her eyes remained on the radar, calculating, anticipating. The unknown craft weren't done. They were intelligent, aggressive, relentless. But now, for the first time, she had the upper hand. She could see their maneuvers, predict their trajectory, force them into patterns that exposed weaknesses. Ghost Rider wasn't just alive. She was commanding the sky. The final assault began. The unknown craft accelerated, closing in with lethal precision. Melissa executed a complex dive, banking sharply, then climbing, drawing the enemy into a calculated trap. The F-22s moved in synchronization, intercepting missiles, blocking paths, and forcing the unknown aircraft to break formation. Briggs' voice returned, tense but awed. Ghost Rider, exceptional. You've turned the tide. Unknown craft are disoriented. Maintain course. Prepare for civilian airspace stabilization. Melissa exhaled slowly, adrenaline coursing through her. The 737 leveled, engines roaring, the city lights below reassuring her that everyone aboard was safe, for now. She glanced at Daniel, whose eyes were wide with disbelief and awe. We're alive," he whispered. Melissa allowed herself a brief, exhausted smile. For now, but the night isn't over. Above them, the unknown aircraft regrouped, then turned sharply, retreating into the darkness. The F-22s followed, ensuring the threat wouldn't return immediately. For the first time since the engagement began, Melissa felt the faintest surge of relief. Ghost Rider had returned. Ghost Rider had survived. And for the first time in decades, she knew she could still face the impossible and win. But the night had changed her. She wasn't just a commercial pilot anymore. She was a guardian in the sky, a force to be reckoned with. And as the 737 sailed through the darkened airspace, Melissa Warren whispered to herself, a vow and a warning intertwined. They'll remember Ghost Rider, and so will I. The sky above Colorado had finally begun to lighten with the first hints of dawn, the horizon streaked with gold and crimson, but the tension in the cockpit remained electric. Melissa Warren's hands gripped the yoke, muscles still taut from hours of evasive maneuvers, aerial acrobatics, and life-or-death decisions. Ghost Rider, the call sign that had haunted and defined her past, had guided them through the impossible night. And now, with the unknown aircraft retreating into the distance, the mission was finally nearing its end. Daniel sat beside her, pale and wide-eyed, clutching the console as if holding on to life itself. "Captain, I can't even, that was insane. How did you?" His voice trailed off, disbelief giving way to awe. Melissa allowed herself a small, weary smile. "We made it," she said softly, her voice calm but carrying the weight of everything that had just transpired. "And everyone aboard is safe. That's what matters." Her eyes swept over the instruments, then out the cockpit window. The city below glimmered in the early morning light, oblivious to the deadly ballet of the night sky that had just unfolded above them. She could see cars winding along highways, the faint glimmer of streetlights still flickering off, and people beginning their day, unaware that their lives had been spared by one woman's extraordinary skill and courage. Briggs' voice crackled through the radio, clipped but relieved. "Ghost Rider, outstanding execution. All threats have been neutralized. Civilian airspace is secure. You've exceeded all expectations. Return to base for debriefing." Melissa exhaled slowly, feeling the adrenaline ebbing from her system, replaced by exhaustion and an odd mixture of pride and relief. "Copy that," she replied, her voice steady, betraying nothing of the storm of emotions swirling beneath her calm exterior. Daniel turned to her, still trembling. "Captain, people need to know. They need to know what just happened. You saved lives tonight. Do you tell anyone?" Melissa shook her head, her expression softening but resolute. "Some things, some parts of us, aren't meant to be shared. Ghost Rider isn't just a call sign, it's a responsibility, and some responsibilities we carry alone." For a moment, silence filled the cockpit, heavy with the weight of the night's events. The 737 leveled as Melissa guided it toward Denver International, the engines humming steadily now, a comforting contrast to the violent roars of the past hours. She allowed herself a brief moment to reflect. She remembered the missions, the ambushes, the lives lost, and the faces of teammates who had trusted her with their lives. Ghost Rider had always been about precision, courage, and survival. And tonight, those qualities had not only kept her alive, they had saved hundreds of innocent lives. The city grew closer, runway lights flickering into view. Melissa's hands moved with the ease of experience, guiding the massive aircraft into the glide path with expert precision. She felt a sense of satisfaction, not pride, but calm recognition. She had faced the impossible and she had prevailed. Daniel watched her, eyes wide with reverence. "Captain, that landing, it's flawless. You really are Ghost Rider." Melissa allowed herself a faint, wry smile. "Not just Ghost Rider tonight. We both survived because we stayed sharp and trusted each other. That's the real victory." The wheels touched down smoothly on the tarmac, the massive 737 decelerating gracefully under her control. Applause erupted in the cabin from passengers who had been oblivious to the night's deadly tension. Melissa felt a small, quiet warmth at their relief, but she didn't look for recognition. She had spent years flying missions that would never be publicized, saving lives in silence. Tonight was no different. Once the aircraft slowed and taxied to the gate, Melissa powered down the systems, exhaling slowly. She leaned back in her seat, letting herself feel the weight of the night. The unknown aircraft had been clever, dangerous, relentless, but Ghost Rider had been sharper, faster, and precise. And now the night was finally over. Briggs' voice came one last time, calm and respectful. "Ghost Rider, you've redefined what it means to protect civilian lives. I hope you understand the gravity of your actions tonight. Lives were saved. Lives that will never know how close they came. You were extraordinary." Melissa nodded silently, her gaze distant, reflecting on the duality of her life. Civilian pilot by day, Ghost Rider when the sky demanded it. The two identities had collided tonight, and she had emerged whole, more than she had been before. Daniel exhaled, glancing at her with a mixture of awe and gratitude. "Captain, are you going to retire the Ghost Rider call sign now? Or is this the new reality?" Melissa's eyes softened, a shadow of melancholy crossing her features. "Some parts of us never retire, Daniel. Ghost Rider is always there, quiet, patient, waiting for the call. But some nights, some missions, they don't need an audience. They only need results. And tonight, the results were enough." Passengers began disembarking, smiles and chatter filling the cabin. Unaware of the invisible war that had been waged in the skies, they carried on with their lives, blissfully safe. Melissa watched them, a small flicker of satisfaction igniting in her chest. She had returned them to the world intact. That was enough. As the last passenger stepped onto the jet bridge, Melissa finally allowed herself to relax, leaning back against the seat. Her eyes closed briefly, the tension of hours fading slowly. Yet beneath the calm surface, the heartbeat of Ghost Rider remained, a steady rhythm, ready for the next impossible mission, the next threat, the next night when ordinary pilots weren't enough. Outside, the first rays of sun illuminated the runway, glinting off the metal fuselage. The unknown aircraft were gone for now, but she knew the sky never truly rested, and neither could she. Ghost Rider had been called back into action tonight, and she had answered flawlessly. Melissa Warren stepped out of the cockpit, taking a deep breath of crisp morning air. The city stretched around her, unaware of the battle that had raged above. And she smiled, faint, knowing that her past and present had merged tonight in a way that no one else could understand. Somewhere high above the earth, a pilot with precision unmatched, courage unbroken, and instincts that had survived decades of warfare prepared silently for the next call. Ghost Rider wasn't finished. But for now, the sky was quiet, the passengers were safe, and Melissa Warren, civilian and warrior, walked away, carrying the weight of a secret victory few would ever know. And somewhere in the distance, a faint radar blip shimmered, a reminder that the night sky still held shadows. Ghost Rider's work was never truly done.